Cool. Are, are you so like with the place? Are you looking at it mainly being for one-to-ones, or like you actually want to have, you'd rather have the group classes? Obviously, from like a value perspective, one-to-ones are incredible, but then also from a value perspective, from a client's point of view, like they're still getting quite good quality from a coach, but they're not getting charged the same amount from a coach. Like, what would you see yourself doing in that space? That space that we have, we pretend that we have.
Yeah, and this is my imaginary world. I like a mix. I think a mix of both. So I group classes are cool because when you can have 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 people and you're getting 90, 80, 70% of what you would get in a one-to-one for like 40% of the price for somebody. But the coach is making twice as much money. So those are fun, but I like one-to-one better. I think it's more fun to be able to like go through and see people progress, and you can be more specific. You don't have to worry about going back and forth between people. Um, so I think a mix of both is valuable,
Mhm.
but I I think the staple kind of should be one-to-one, like high ticket personal training.
Mhm. How do you, let's just imagine like the world, obviously the world that we live in, it's challenging for people to be able to commit to one-to-one outside work hours. Do you go, I mean, the particular person that's going to be working with you is going to be a younger, I'm assuming, by the way, a younger athlete. Are they are they going to be working with you like throughout the days or early in the mornings? Because we're going to have like that gap in between, and most gyms have that gap, which I think is probably one of the hardest times to fill. Have you filled that time, and if so, like what do you do? How do you feel it?
I think that's actually a cool thing to have for me because it's like, all right, I can do all my online stuff during that from 11 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have plenty of work to do online, filming, editing, posting, answering comments, DMs,
Mm-hmm.
consults, whatever. Like cool, like, there's like 5 hours right there to get done, or you could like take a nap and eat lunch or whatever. But like I mean, the busy times are always going to be from like 6 to 9, and then from like 4 to 7 or 8, and then you get the time in the middle to lift and do the online stuff and do all of that. So I don't think that's a huge problem. And that's also the good thing about doing online is like you don't you have like help in like a monetary sense of like you're like, oh, my rent's $6,000 this month. Like I've only gotten $5,800 in personal training payments this month. Like I'm screwed with like if you're making a couple $1,000s a month online, even if it's like you couldn't sustain yourself with it online, but like that'll push you over the hump of like being able to pay your rent and your front desk person and whoever. So
Mm-hmm.
got a little bit off track there, but
No.
I'm not super worried about a dead time. You can also
Yeah.
offer it as open gym to people, like
Mm.
20 bucks a head to get in, like just do whatever, be out by 3 or something.
Mm. Yeah. What's your thought on training youth, as in like younger teenagers, probably from your 12s to 13s? Are you a fan of yourself? Like obviously kids, I've been training them and I know the benefit of it, but for you personally, do you enjoy training that younger age group, or would you rather focus with like that 18, 19, 20 and onwards?
I mean, I think like the 18 to 30 is the most fun age group to train. Um, but like it still is. I haven't done too much work with younger kids, to be fair. I've done some, but it's cool because like you could have them do like almost anything and they'll be recovered tomorrow. Like they're all like superhuman. They're all weak, but they're like superhuman recovery. And then if you look at it like in a monetary thing again, like generally it's like housewives and like adults that'll pay you bills for the most part. and neighbors don't bring their kids, or like, to be fair, so much emphasis is put on youth athletics here that like if you live in where I am, it's like maybe it is parents playing for their kids' personal training too that will pay your bills, but um yeah, no, I mean I wouldn't like put like a if you're under 15 you can't come, like
Mm,
you can still do like curl, you can still squat and do chin ups and all of the stuff.
mm. Yeah, I've come a long way. Like, well, I think things have come a long way too. Like, um, back in the day, probably 5 years ago, I was doing CrossFit for kids, and so like that was massive. Where I was doing it, like there were kids everywhere, and you'd always get that odd, like when you told people or parents what you were doing, it's like, oh, but isn't it bad for kids to lift weights? And I'm like, I see these kids, some of these kids now, and they're like, they're super resilient. Like they've just got this, or we call it like an aura. Like they just the way that they carry themselves, it's like they've built that resilience up over time. And like, sure, it's not just through lifting weight, but it's through the constant change of variables with whether it's the cardio stuff that they were doing or the way that they were lifting or whatever. But there's like, I think there's so much benefit and positive influence, especially when you can see like I had two 15-year-old kids last night who they're just banging out chin ups behind me, like just with no dramas at all, just up and down, like no problems. They smashed out like 15, 16. No, what was it? Yeah, 15 pull ups, but like over a dense session, and like actually no, chin ups and like chest to bar, proper chest to bar. It's like as a kid, imagine you're looking at other kids going like, how the fuck can he do or she do a pull up or a chin up? And I'm like, I can't even like get up off the floor. And it's like this big, this feeling. I think it was it Ben Clearfield who spoke about that, like kids being. I listened to a podcast once, and I think he was on it, and he was saying like, how good does it feel? How good must it feel for a kid who can just like no dramas, just pull himself or herself up, and it's just like it's easy as. And like these places teach these kids not only the physical way of like doing it, but like you're just building that mental and emotional capacity of like that positiveness throughout their life. Like I can do this. It's fine. It's no dramas. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like it's not like you're building strength in weird ways
Mm.
like powerlifting squat. Like you could do like people like use the phrase like natural patterns in like horrible ways a lot of times now, but like I don't think anybody would disagree that like being better at chin-ups is a bad thing, or like being good at squatting all the way down and coming back up, like that's not a bad thing. Like being able to run around and jump and like land and do push-ups, like I think very few people are gonna be like, yeah, this is gonna set that kid up for failure. And then like there will be weird people that'll disagree with some of the other stuff, but like, man, I mean, you're just like building this base like so young and like continuing to build it, and it's like if you build the base for long enough, like it just gets taller on its own, and then when you decide it's time to peak for something, like, or like everybody else is in trouble.
Well, because I've got this base that's just massive of like that constant repetition and that work that they've been doing over time, and kids, like you said, kids just have this ability to recover insanely quick. It's just like instant. Yeah, let's go again. Yeah, let's go again. And it's just like, wish I felt that way. Man, getting close to 30, I can tell you what, things are starting to get pretty sore pretty quick. Anyway, with the with the kid stuff as well. I mean, when I was back in school, I was actually talking with one of my clients about it yesterday, and I don't know if you were taught this back in school, and I still think that there has been a bit of like a bit of bullshit from the schools. Do you remember slow twitch and fast twitch muscle fibers? Were you ever taught that in school?
Yeah.
So do you think that this the I mean, the way that I was taught is like some people magically have more fast twitch muscle fibers than other people, and that's what makes them faster. But do you believe that now with the knowledge you know that it's more so the tendon strength that's creating that explosiveness and that speed rather than having more or less muscle, fast twitch fibers and slow twitch fibers? What do you think?
I think when you see people that are like that like pop and like that are like that, it is I would classify that under like elasticity and ability and some of like the tendon structures.
Mm.
Like somebody who's got like a super long Achilles tendon is gonna be has a high likelihood of being more bouncy and springy, to use those kind of catchwords, than somebody with like this really huge calf muscle belly and like a really tiny Achilles tendon. Like that's gonna play a role, and then like how much elasticity you train, like what you've been doing from a young age, like that's probably gonna be more on the springy side. But that's not to discount that like people do have pretty different muscle fiber makeups a lot of times, um, and you can kind of see it when people lift. So like maybe you can hit 120 kilo squat and I can hit 120 kilo squat, and that's both of our 1 rep maxes. But like if we go down to 110 and like you can do 7 and I can do 2, like that probably is more representative of like me being a higher fast. Maybe the squat is a bad exercise, like call it a bicep curl. Like if we can both curl 20 kilos in each hand, and like then we bump down to 18, and you can do 7 and I can do 2, it's probably a higher likelihood that I have a higher fast twitch muscle fiber makeup, in terms of like I can the peak is really high, but it's like very little volume.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean it's probably gonna have a bit of an effect in my eyes of like how fast you move things. Like some people are grinders. Like you're like, oh, this dude's about to fail. He's like on a bench press, and then he just keeps going. It's like you should have been done like 4 reps ago, but like they just keep doing reps like that. I know some people like that I've worked with, and like I'm very much not like that.
You're one and
Not
done.
Yeah, not that I'm like a super super high fast twitch makeup guy, but like I don't like once I start grinding reps, like I'm about done. Like some people just grind them and grind them and grind them and grind them. So I think that's more representative of what your muscle fiber makeup than how springy or elastic you are,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not usually the limiting factor in how fast you can run. It's usually elasticity. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but that was my
Yeah, yeah.
long-winded thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, so yeah, of course it did. It gave me a better like perspective and understanding, like because it's more so that slow twitch muscle fiber, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that I understand that is you've got someone who's a grinder who has probably more of that muscular endurance that can push through that weight comparatively to someone who is not, who cannot do that because they're more of that explosive nature. True?
Yeah, pretty much.
For the most part. So for those who didn't understand Matt's long-winded answer, there's the short one. No, I'm just playing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just think that there's like, especially when you go back to schools, and I think back to school when we were getting taught all this stuff about like the anaerobic and the aerobic and the ATP-CP system and all this sort of stuff, and then you go into the slow twitch and the fast twitch. There's like so much more that's so interesting about the body that has been kind of like, no, we'll skip that. We don't worry about that. And obviously, because things have changed dramatically in the 12 years since I've been at school, and obviously before that too, like there's so much more there too. I remember Keegan speaking about it, that like just because things work, so like for example, you can use a Nokia and an iPhone. Just because a Nokia works doesn't mean that there's better adapted technology in terms of like an iPhone that can do just as good a job and probably do more, which is like the ATG system. You know what I mean? So like I feel like there's so much that's being missed from a young age, even in terms of training, not even in terms of learning, but in terms of training. There's so much that's being missed in training. What do you think could be included more for that youth? So we're looking at like probably that high school bracket. We'll go with 13 to and 18 in there. What do you think could be used to create? Because we spoke about like kids who have that bigger base are going to be able to propel themselves. But what do you think could be used for those younger kids to help propel themselves? So we're talking carries, we're talking bigger kind of like more of your squats, more of your pull-ups, more of all that sort of stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I think at that age it's more of like a joint preparatory thing. Like taking your joints through a full range is probably like about the most important thing there. Um, and then like eating more, to be fair, putting a little bit of size, but like what Keith is super, super good at is putting size on these kids without like seemingly much effort. But like hitting all of your joints in balance through a full range of motion for the joint, not necessarily of an exercise. And then like going out and playing and doing stuff more. Like it's almost like lifting in the weight room isn't necessarily at that point for increasing the athleticism and turning you into a freak. It's like, let's put you in a position where you're like almost unbreakable and then like go out and have fun and build the athleticism like that instead of trying to do all this crazy shit in the weight room. Like, let's put you in the best possible position to stay healthy through anything, give you a base of strength to pull from when you do go out and play tag or whatever, or like you step on the pitch and like you're sprinting like that. Like, I think that's probably the best sort of position. And when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, like we talked about it before, like that's when your tendons are like still growing. Like that's when you can develop these like tendons that are twice as thick as somebody else if you train right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's almost kind of what I think of even still for everybody. More so now, it's like being really strong in the weight room is awesome and like it's really good for you. And it varies how much of that you need depending on your sport. But like if you can just put yourself in a place where you're healthy and then you can sprint and you can jump, like there's not going to be much more effective exercises than sprinting as fast as you can and jumping as high as you can and playing a sport. So again, long-winded answer to say like build that base of full range of motion strength so that you can go do the things that probably are better at developing athleticism.
Like playing a sport.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's specific.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you big on specifics as in like specific sport training, like you and your athletes? Would you rather them go and play more of their sport than coming to see you?
I mean, it
Or is it
depends on
dependent?
it depends on where you're at. Like, if you're trying to be a professional, like one of the guys I worked with, like wants to be a professional soccer player or basketball, whatever he hasn't decided. But his knees kind of like he's having problems with his knees, so it's like, yeah, I mean, like I understand the level of technical ability that it takes to get to be a professional, but like you can't put that effort in right now because of your knees. So, like, you got to come see me more now so we can fix your knees, and then you can come see me less and like play your sport more, but like come to see me for like the remedial stuff to keep you on that path. Versus if somebody came to me and they're like a freak and never had an injury in their life, it's like, all right, well, we'll do some stuff with you, but like if you don't have anything glaring issues, like play your sport more, jump more, continue to develop resilience like that. If you don't have any pain, like there's not a ton unless you're like want to be a lineman in American football and you're like 180 pounds. Like, all right, we need to get you to like 300. But yeah, I mean, like it's yeah. I mean, to get better at your sport, you got to play your sport. That's just what it is. Like pros aren't pros because they're no pro like sucks technically. Everybody is great technically. Even people you don't think are that good technically are fantastic. And like then you have a range of athleticism, but like when you marry the two is when you get the elite players. So you got to have both. And people also don't like have horrible, horrible knees.
Yeah. Yeah. Where are you at the moment with the it's like Instagram Fight Club at the moment for you by the looks of things, because you're like with the having the aerobic capacity versus being able to sprint. There was I think it was last week you were putting up quite a bit. Have you had any people bite back on any of that you've been putting up?
Oh, people hate it. I've been
You're
trying to
just doing
be.
these.
I know. I've been trying to be more agreeable online with people to not alienate so much. But man, I was listening to. There's a track coach in the States. It's like a couple hours away from me. His name is Tony Holler. I don't know if you've seen it, but he had this line that I heard a couple days ago that I thought was awesome. And he was like, get rid of any non-specific conditioning. Do no non-specific conditioning. It's like, what's non-specific conditioning? Like, it will depend on what you're conditioning for. If you're just trying to be generally fit, like general conditioning is specific for you. So like that's where you do the zone 2 cardio and you can do the rower and you can go for a jog and all that, whatever. But if you're conditioning specifically to be a better soccer player, like there is no specific conditioning better or besides playing soccer of some sort.
Mm.
So get rid of everything else. Like
Yeah.
there's like GPP, general physical preparedness in terms of a strength aspect. Like, yeah, you got to do general stuff there because it transfers over and you got specificity like that. But like conditioning doesn't work the same way as strength does or speed does. Like I I love that. And I guess he was saying he's writing a book called Tired is the Enemy. And I was like, oh, that's the best book name I've ever heard. Like I want to steal it so bad, but I know it's his, so I can't. But yeah, I guess if you could take two things away from today for anybody who's listening, being tired is the enemy, and no non-specific conditioning.
So specific for football is playing football. Just play football. Yeah.
Play it more. Like get faster, get stronger, play more.
I had the privilege of doing that course the other week. That was it was a waste of a weekend, in my opinion anyway. Like it just gave me, it was like just a cash cow. It was a money revenue thing and yeah, sure, like I learned a little bit about a couple of things from a conditioning perspective. But one of the teachers there was really like, all of the examples he used, he purposely left soccer out, football out. And I'm like, I'm waiting for it. Like, and he's getting towards like the end of the presentation. And then he kind of like, he asks, oh, is there anyone here who's into, because we started talking about like MAS running, for example. And he started talking about particular sports and all this sort of stuff. And he's going, oh, like, oh, is there any soccer players here? And like, or people who are in football or soccer or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I put my hand up. And he's like, oh, okay, I won't bash on them too much then. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And he's like, so soccer, they tried to reinvent the wheel around conditioning where they do these high intense games. They get the high speed meters up that you would be seeing in your MAS efforts, as an example. It's like, but it doesn't actually work because you get some players who cheat and all this other kind of crap. And I'm just sitting there just copying it. It's like, yeah, okay. I can imagine what you were going to say. I can only imagine. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but anyway. And for someone who has played football and for someone else who has played football, in those games, you obviously get those one or two players who aren't doing that work. Like it's just inevitable that you're not going to be able to tap into everyone. But a majority of those players are putting in that high intense work and they're working quite hard to be able to get the results or the desired outcome that the coach is trying to get from the players. And so like he was hammering, he went further on with it. Was saying like it just doesn't work because you can't get everyone to do it. And I'm like, I think that's a bit of bullshit because having played it and having done it, and I'm sure the same goes for you. When you're in those games, like you personally, you don't want to be the one that's letting the team down. Personally, you don't want to be the one that's just sitting back and doing fuck all. Like you actually want to be putting that work in. And yeah, it's just more of a comment than a question, but I think it's a bit of bullshit where, you know, he was saying that coaches or football, soccer coaches think that they've just reinvented this conditioning world where they're making it so sport specific and all this kind of stuff that like you just can't do it, you can't replicate it the same. And I'm like, no, I've been there. You can, because I've done it and I know it works because it's worked for me. It's worked for a lot of other footballers as well.
It just worked. I mean, if you that in my head, that's such a ridiculous point because it's like if you're good enough that you can play in like the small like sevens or something, and you don't have to run, and your team is like not like beating the shit out of you for being lazy, like you're doing something right. Like you have some ability that like this guy just is magically in the right spot all the time. He doesn't need to run. Like, do you have something so everybody else doesn't? Like, cool, Berbatov. Like, there was somebody. It was like Matt Letitia or somebody a long time ago. He's like, yeah, you never need to run if you're always in the right spot. I was like, that's a good point. If you can do that in the small sided games that we're supposed to be conditioning, like, good for you, man. Like, I don't know anybody that's like, man, if you play 3v3 in like a pitch that's a little bit too big for 3v3, like nobody isn't gassed. Everybody is dead tired, or you're just getting the shit kicked out of you. Like, yeah, there's studies out there that like small sided games are just as, if not more effective as high intensity interval training for getting players in shape for football, soccer, whatever. And you get the technical aspect of getting better at what matters, which is the sport. Yeah, so I mean, it's when people say they like you need to go on these long runs or whatever, like it just sort of, never mind. You know what I'm trying to say.
You can look at it from like the extreme perspective of you've got those players. We'll use Messi as an example because I think he's probably the king of actually doing it. When you've seen those videos of the way he's just got his head on a swivel stick, and like probably for me and you, that space that he's created for us, it's like it's not enough for us to be able to do what we need to do. But for him, it's like he has the technical ability to be able to be in a space where he's maybe half a meter or a meter away from his opponents, that he doesn't have to do all this running, doesn't have to do all this extra work because he's doing it with his brain, he's doing it with his body in terms of like the space that he's in. So I think that those games, again, you can either get that conditioning aspect physically, or you can actually get that conditioning aspect from like a tactical or technical perspective as well, where you're constantly on the scan, constantly looking. It's not just about trying to physically improve, because let's be honest, you don't have a striker and a center midfielder doing the same amount of high speed meters, doing the same amount of distance in a game. You're not going to get that. They're two completely different players. So why train everyone in that longer running? Unless you're trying to get loading from a loading perspective, you want them to be able to get that into their system from a training perspective, then yeah, okay. But I still think that there's so much difference, there's so much varying between the two types of players that you can't expect a striker to be doing all this running in a small sided game compared to your midfielder who's like, I'm trying to think of like who one of those midfielders would be who's just constantly there. We'll go back to when yeah. So like a Conte, who's just constantly, he's just everywhere. They're two completely different players, two completely different styles. You can't expect that to happen for both players,
Yeah, and I think
individualization.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I think people make the mistake too of seeing like, man, like Conte's everywhere. It's like, yeah, but he's not just jogging everywhere. Like it's not like he's just like moping along the whole time and you're like, man, that guy can really jog. Like shut up. No, like when you say like, man, he's everywhere, it's because he sprinted halfway across the field and got there, and then like made a slide tackle or whatever, and then they like went out for a throw, and then he sat there for 3 seconds and recovered and stood around, and then it went in, and then he sprinted again. It's not like, boy, that guy can jog. It's like, damn, that dude just made a whole bunch of sprints really fast. Like it's not jogging. Nobody's ever scored a goal because they jogged for longer than somebody else. That's ridiculous. Like, I think I said it before, but it's like it happens all the time that people score goals because they're faster than somebody else. Nobody ever scored a goal because they jogged for longer. That's stupid. that would just be stupid. And even the players, like to reiterate, like the Conte example, Conte is all over the place in people's minds because he like sprints and then he sprints and then he recovers and he sprints and he recover. It's that repeated sprint ability. It's not that general aerobic. I can jog here and I can jog here. It's like how many times can you sprint? How fast can you sprint? How quickly can you recover in between the sprints? And there's a cardio base level that helps you recover in between the sprints, to be fair, but like you still have to be able to sprint. I don't like also if you're super slow, nobody cares. Like, is he jogging? Oh, he's actually sprinting. That guy just is really slow. Like, who gives a shit then? Like, it's everything revolves around sprinting, in my eyes. The jogging is like cool, you gotta get from one place to another, so what? And it's like if something's gonna happen, it happens at a sprint. Whether it's a quick 1v1 or it's a 50-50 duel or somebody breaking through or it's catching up to somebody, like it is the sprinting that matters.
Yeah, agree. 150% agree. That really, it was like the end of the day. And I'd been sitting there from 8 o'clock and it was getting close to 5 o'clock. And it was just like, I don't have the energy for this. I'm not gonna like, and everyone was like this by the end of it, like, we want to go home. I'm like, yeah, I want to go home too. I don't want it to be a all about me question. But yeah, it's just that was very, very frustrating, like from my perspective, because you have that sort of stuff that just happens all the time, like where people just, you don't have an understanding of the sport itself, and you're a strength and conditioning coach. Like, I am now classified as a level 1 strength and conditioning coach here in Australia, but it's not something that I would go around telling people that I am, because it's not, to me, it doesn't give me any value anymore. Maybe from a perspective of like working with football team or soccer teams here, it's like, yeah, that's my in, be there. But yeah, the stuff that I've learned, and I'm sure a lot of people have learned from these podcasts, and also from like the ATG stuff that we've done too, it's like that there is where you've got that level of understanding and athletic understanding of how to actually help young kids, help athletes, help footballers, help basketballers, help general people. I think I told you last week, but I had a 69-year-old squat ass to grass for the first time in 20 years. It's like, that's the sort of stuff that's important to me. And that's how you do it. You don't just do it by doing like, normal box squats. And sure, you got to start there, but it's like, how can you get more out of the joints? How can you get more out of the body? How can you get more out of who you are? That's what I think. And that's what ATG has done. I keep looking and pointing up there because that's where the certificate is, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. People, I get the same, like you had your instructor there. I get people online that are like, and it's usually on TikTok. People usually are like pieces of shit on TikTok. But they're like, but I need to run 5 kilometers every day because it keeps me fit. It was like, no, you're just dumb. Like, like you just don't know what's going on. Like you are just wasting your time and thinking that's what's going to keep you fit, or you're fat. I don't know what it is. You don't have a profile picture and you have no videos posted. Yeah, I mean it's a crazy world. People are, and like there's the other aspect of like coaches. They got like run into the ground as a player and now they're coaches. And my favorite thing now is like the coaches that are like, whether or not we're the best team, we're gonna be the fittest team. It's like, are you just incapable of making players better? Like, how could you just focus on making all the players on your team better? Like, why do you have to be like, cool, you're the fittest team, but like your players kind of suck. Like, come on, buddy. Like, maybe let's run a little less and you make the players better. It that feels like a cover up for me. And I've played for a lot of those coaches and like good people, definitely good people, but like that's just like the wrong way to think about things in my mind.
I've since joining up with my old senior team, Metro, I've seen the polar opposites, like, and everything in between. That aspect that you spoke about, of like the coaches just like run more, work more. You know, the fitter you are, the better you're going to become. Then this year, what I've seen in the transformation of the players, and I've had some players too, they come out, they might have like finished training early, like because with their loads are being managed because there's been a lot of games over the last couple of weeks. Or in a game, for example, one of the boys rolled their ankles, so he missed out training on a Tuesday night, or he sat out here, part of the training and sat out the rest of it and just went in to see the physios to make sure everything's okay. And he's come out. It's happened twice with two players that actually both rolled their ankles, or I think it was actually from a tackle. They came out and I'm standing there watching training and they come and stand next to me and they go, fuck, is that how fast we move the ball? Is that how quick we are looking at the game? It's like, yeah, you guys are electric. Like the way that they move, and they're fit. Like they are really, really fit. But technically and tactically throughout the entire game, I'm talking from start to finish. I mean, some games are obviously different than others. But the way that they're hitting passes, the way that they're controlling the ball, the way that they're knocking the ball around, the way that you can see that they're thinking, it's like that has been of paramount over fitness. Sure, you have that aspect of fitness. You need to be fit to play football. You can't go and say that you can be, well, actually, it depends what level you're playing at. If you're playing at that semi-pro or that pro level, you've got to be fit to play football. If you're not fit, you're going to get found out pretty easy or pretty quickly. But these players, the way that they move this ball and the way that they tactically and technically looks like they're gifted, because they're still gifted, but they're just a class above the rest. And it shows. We're sitting top of the table. We've conceded 9 goals in 12 or 13 games. Like it's just everything's sort of all coming together. And that's when you know you've got like a team that's not just fit, because you're going to have teams that run rings around you, but can't kick a ball for shit. Like they try and match you physically, but they can't match you technically or tactically, you know. And I think that technical and tactical ability can be done, going back to what we were talking about before, can be done in those small-sided games because you're put under pressure. You have to make sure you're hitting passes. You got to make sure you're defending. Then you get the ball and you're fucked. And then you got to try and pass it and not give the ball away. Like it's about trying to retain possession and everything like that. You know, you can be fit, but as soon as you get the ball, you just give it away. Well, that's no fucking good.
Yeah, like first and foremost, I think you should be the best technical team. Like if you could pick qualities, like you'd want to be the best technical team, and then you'd want to be the fastest team. And then like if there's anything else you could possibly be, and then it would be the fittest team. Like being fitter is cool. Like it's still being better than being the less fit team, but like man, teams would do so much better if they were like, all right, we're gonna be the fastest team, we're gonna be the freshest team, and we're gonna be the technically and tactically the most sound team. Like you would just be running over everybody, like your team is now. If you imagine like all 11 of your players are faster than their individual counterparts on the other team, and they're better technically, like I don't care if you're less fit, you're gonna win that game.
Yeah, and it shows too, because you can be super fit, you can be able to run more Ks than anyone else, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be winning the games, because the game is won when the ball is put in the back of the net. And if you can't string 2 passes together, there is no chance that you're going to be able to concede a goal, unless by some fluke we've made a mistake, and that's the only time where teams have scored. Actually, no, I wouldn't say it's the only time. Majority of the times has been when our team has made a mistake and their quality is like, oh, I got the ball, and their strikers have managed to score. It's been like a pass back, or it's been like a pass to them. So it's just our mistake leading to goals most of the time. But yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's that I have never once heard. I've played for a lot of coaches, and I've never once heard we're going to be the fastest team. I don't think that's like 98% of football, soccer coaches, whatever, have even considered like maybe I'll just make all of my players faster, or like people understand that you need to be the best technical team, but like no, I really do think that speed is sort of like people just kind of forget about it. Like I'm sure there's some videos online of people going out asking coaches, and they're like, what's your ideal player like? And it's never, yeah, man, somebody that can jog for like 12 Ks, like no problem, but it's like slow. Nobody would ever say that. It's like, yeah, man, I want somebody who's wicked on the ball, super fast, super explosive, change the game. Like, so why don't you build those players instead of building like marathon runners or like or this is also fun, like covering it in the guise of like mental toughness training. Like we're gonna do burpees for an hour because it's gonna make you tougher. Like I don't I've never maybe you're different, but I've never left one of those ridiculously stupid like conditioning sessions been like, damn, I feel really tough right now.
No,
You never happened to you?
I've never done one of those sessions, so I can't comment on the feeling afterwards. But I think it's a load of bull to do that. Like I would just do that just to do it. It wouldn't be for any mental toughness. And I mean, I don't know if I would do it just to do it either. But like, you know what I mean. I wouldn't. Yeah, wouldn't do it for football.
You've never had a coach put you through like a mental toughness session?
I know the coaches here down under. I think they're built a little different than.
Maybe all the players down under don't need any more mental toughness. Maybe we're just all soft up here in the States.
You know what? You said it, not me. So.
All right. That must be it. I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, man. I reckon we leave it there for today, Matty. Where's everyone going to find all your good stuff? Your online programs are all up on Insta in the link. That's correct.
Yeah. There's I moved over to a different app. So there's if you want a 7-day free trial, link in my bio, you can get it, hop on there, go through everything. If you don't like it, you don't have to pay anything. You just hop off. You could write down all the programs and leave if you want. I don't really care. But yeah, Score Performance, SKAAR Performance, Instagram. Instagram's the best place. Don't worry about anywhere else. Where can where can where can everybody find you, Steph?
Yeah. Stay off TikTok because Matt's sick of you. Nah, just just Coach Carly on Instagram with the 3 eyes. We're gonna start to put a little bit more back up on there in the coming weeks. Where now that I'm getting a little bit more sleep, which is nice. Florence got 9 hours the other night in a row. Oh, it was a dream.
Oh, nice.
You really start to realize what it's like, man. Being sleep deprived. Yeah, it's a game changer. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week.